Progress.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, for God's sakes, no.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Go Tobago.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
No.
Do you do a lot of Zoom meetings, or is that a stupid question?
No,
Never a stupid question, Mark. We have a few.
okay?
No audio. Hello?
Hello.
Morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear Neville?
yes.
Yes, she said.
How do I get rid of that white thing in the middle?
What does it say?
Just to hear others.
Yeah,
Join-
okay, yeah.
Join audio.
Join audio.
Dial in. No audio.
We can hear you.
Just join audio.
It doesn't do that.
We can hear you, Neville.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna leave this thing on. I can't see anybody's face. All right. Okay. This thing says Wi-Fi dial in on low audio.
And it looks as if Dawn and Linda and Diane are still missing. Is that correct?
Correct. I will reach out to Diane to see if she's able to get on. I don't know where Linda is, and
Is Dawn away?
I believe so.
I'll call Linda. Was this the one that Linda was gonna be away?
I think that was later.
It was later?
No,
Pretty
she's
sure.
going to be here today.
Okay, oh, she's not answering.
Is that a Stobart on your wall, Denise?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is that a Stobart on your wall over your left shoulder?
Oh, yes, it is.
I thought I recognized
Yes.
the little boy.
Oh, my goodness. You have a good eye.
Well, I love Stobart stuff. He has some nifty paintings of Nantucket.
Yes.
All right, Linda's not answering the landline or the cell phone.
Okay, it is 9:01 and and we do have a quorum. So I will call the meeting to order. This is a remotely conducted meeting. And I'm not sure, since there aren't public provided, whether or not I have to go through the overall guidelines. But basically, we're doing this in accordance with Governor Baker's rules relative to the pandemic. And what we're doing is every action will be done with an individual vote by each of the commissioners as to anything that is voted on today. I don't have any things on the agenda to vote on other than a call to order and the approval of the agenda. So I would move to that, and I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Linda and seconded
By Jack, I think.
By Jack. Okay, all those in favor, Neville? Jack,
Yes.
Mark,
Aye.
No, but
Linda?
you're not connected to the audio.
I know I'm not.
Tim,
Yes.
John Trudell.
I can say I'm here.
Diane doesn't appear on, the chair votes aye. First item on the agenda is the request from the Nantucket Racket Sports Expansion. Mark, welcome to the CPC for your presentation this morning. What we normally do is we allow you to take 10 to 15 minutes to be able to sort of flesh out the details of the request that you've made to us. And then we leave 15 minutes or so for the commissioners to ask any questions with respect to that. At the end of that, it may be that we'll ask you to provide some additional information to us prior to our determination as to voting for making recommendations to the town meeting. So today's subject is for you to make the presentation with respect to what your request is and why we should be looking very favorably on this request. So Mark, the floor is yours. And please introduce your team as well.
Thank you, Ken. I will do that. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Furlong. I'm the president of the NRSA. I'm joined by our treasurer, Denise Davila, and by our chair of expansion, Luke Thornwell. We very much appreciate you considering our request for funds to expand our current campus. Currently, the racket sports situation on Nantucket excuse me, is extremely limited unless you have money, private land, or access to a yacht club. Your ability to play on public land, either pickle, paddle, or tennis on good courts with any value comes down to really one choice, which is the NRSA, our association. We are the exclusive rackets licensee of the land bank and have been good partners with them since our inception. A brief background. The Nantucket Paddle Tennis Association was formed in 1974 with one court off Pulpus Road. There were about 20 founding members. I first came to play in the 1990s and remember those old times and that old hut with a smile. We moved to our current location in 2008, expanding to 4 paddle courts. And just recently, we changed our name to the NRSA, Racket Sports Association, to recognize all racket sports. Our current campus houses 4 paddle courts, 4 pickle courts, as well as a hut with 2 bathrooms and parking for 27 cars off Hinsdale Road. Through the recent generosity of the land bank and of course of your CPC money, we finished construction of the 4 pickle courts approximately 12 months ago, but we were already overwhelmed by the demand of members and guests to the island. Our yearly membership has risen from an average of 75 as recently as a few years ago to a high of 350. And registrations from all players, you have to register to play, whether you're a guest or a member, in the last 12 months has topped 800.
Can I, excuse me for 1 second, Mr. Chairman, can you ask everyone who is not speaking to mute? There's an awful lot of chatter and movements and everything else going on that's distracting.
Okay, everyone, please mute if you're other than the speakers at this particular point in time. Thank you.
Mark can keep talking. He's talking now. Mark, you're on mute.
We can't hear Mark.
Mark, you're
Mark's
still
on
on
mute.
How's that?
Now we can hear you.
John, I know you muted me. I'm going to talk to you about that later. I just had been finishing my talk about the registrations from all players to our site are well over 800. They're probably going to go to 1,000 very soon. So our mission is to keep resident and guest fees as low as possible while maintaining the grounds in a professional manner and to keep up with the growing demand. This summer, we were granted the land adjacent, just north of our courts, by the land bank with their enthusiastic approval to build more needed courts for an ever-expanding island community. We are asking for this grant to expand our campus Our association is proposing to build 4 additional pickle courts, 3 tennis courts, 2 viewing areas, a hitting wall plus bathrooms and parking adjacent to the courts. And my good friend Luke will take you through that in a minute. As you probably have read both in the Globe and in the Inky Mirror, pickle is the fastest growing sport in America, and the demand for courts is enormous from both residents as well as guests. Combine that with the weekly calls we get regarding tennis availability, and we feel that being the one public place on island approved, able to build, maintain, and organize racket sports warrants this investment. We feel that when it's completed, in maybe the next 12 months, this generation, as well as the next generation, my grandchildren hopefully, will be playing, was our grandfather yesterday, by the way, will be playing on these courts and see the fruits of our labor for years to come, residents as well as guests. That's our plan, and that's what we're asking for the support of the CPC to mirror the enthusiastic support we've already gotten from Land Bank. So I say thank you for your attention. And now I'd like to ask Denise, who is our treasurer, to take us through our financial status. And I will now mute.
Hi, I'm Denise DeVella. I've been the treasurer first at MPTA and now at Nantucket Racket Sports Association. I'm happy to say that we're in a good place compared to where we were a couple of years ago. We had pickleball going on in the island in a separate facility, and we did also play in the winters on the paddle courts, but it was not very safe. It was not very satisfactory. So when these pickleball courts were approved, the numbers in our NRSA expanded exponentially. We went from, as Mark said, 75 members, maybe in 2019. And now we're at roughly 350, and I think the numbers are going to soar. Land Bank has not told us that we have to put a limit on it at this point. And if we ever have to do a waiting list, I mean, we will. But this is meant to be open to the public and all members of the public. At this point in time, our fees are $350 for one person and $300 for the second. We are hoping to be able to lower those fees or make some sort of accommodation going forward as the money comes in. Right now, we have roughly monthly expenses of about $2,000. We have roughly $160,000 in the bank right now. We expect probably another $14,000 to $20,000 coming in the next month or two as the rest of our paddle members register. I think we're in really good shape financially. We're able to pay all of our bills, do some of the things we've not been able to do in the past. We're about to put up a sign on our hut. We just purchased bike racks. We're doing some, cleanup landscaping that has not been done before. We actually paved the parking lot this past year. We are, I think, very much in line with your public goals to serve not only the entire community, but all ages, all demographics. This summer, we had a request from the Safe Place to bring some of the children over to be able to use the courts free at a time when the courts were not that busy, which is in the hottest part of the afternoon, obviously. So we're able to serve some of that community. We also had the synagogue that came and brought a group of people to use the pickleball courts. And now there's talk of an interfaith community grouping that will come, whether it's this fall or next summer, I'm not sure, but that conversation is going on right now. I think the enthusiasm is really, really incredible. I've been trying to go to most of the drop-ins, which occur 3 days a week. And if you don't know, drop-in is a three times a week. Anyone can come to our pickleball courts, and we have a system of setting up play so that we make sure the beginners are paired with more experienced players. And as a result, everyone gets to know each other. You don't stay with the same player all the time. And we have ages ranging from, say, 15 to 85 routinely. And we meet players from all over the country. And actually, Giuseppe, who was from Italy this summer and played with us quite a bit. One of the players I met this summer, who has played in a number of places, just told me the other day that this was the most friendly place he had played in ever. So I thought that was an incredibly high compliment, and made us all feel great. I do feel like we can financially support what's going forward. I think we can keep our fees lower with your help. If we can build this facility, I think we'll be in good shape. And but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Denise. Luke, do you want to briefly take us through the master plan of the campus and what we're going to be trying to do and maybe a timing? Luke?
Yeah, thanks. Is the administrator able to put up our presentation, our color presentation?
Glenna? I had sent it to her. If you have our presentation, it is in there.
Or Luke can screen share it.
What was your question?
Glenna, we need the site plan that shows the layout of the courts. That I think
Mark is holding it up now.
No, they were asking to see if you could put it up in the office so it works like the HTC does. Or you can put the plan up on the office. Otherwise, Luke can share the screen. Can you share the screen, Luke?
No, I wasn't understanding. I don't know how to do that. I thought you guys were going to present it as an image. Shoot. Well,
If it's on CD or it was emailed in to Glenna, she can put it up if we can
It
figure it out.
was, Glenna. It's in the presentation about halfway through. It's a color scheme. And I also sent you one yesterday. It's about 8 pages in.
Is this the one you're talking about?
That's it. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so the best I could do is hold it up.
That's not going to work. Everybody has their packets. You can go to that page. What page,
So
Mark?
It's about page 7. It's the only color page. And it's the scheme of the phases that we went through for the first. Yeah, our original was the parking lot and the paddle courts. Then we built the pickle courts. All that land is undeveloped, and that's phase 3. We're ready to go on that third phase.
if everyone turns to that page, I'll give you a second to do that. I'll guide you through, just so you have a very clear visual of what our history was and where we're going. So if you look at your page on the left-hand side, you'll see phase 1, and that's I've got mine marked. That shows the four existing paddle clubs, paddle courts that were brought in 2008. As Mark identified, there's a warming hut there where we have a fireplace, and in the dead of winter, people can view those courts from inside. It's a really comfortable and good kind of environment in terms of the deck around to observe the paddle players, which is a big part of paddle tennis, is the social aspects of supporting each other in tournament play and in weekly play. We are hoping in the long run in that area identified as phase 1 to include more stadium seating, which you can see on the far right-hand side as dotted in to the right of the 2 right-hand courts. Then phase 2 was accomplished and was completed this year, of course, and has been highly used as been indicated, with the lighting just being installed as recently as about a few weeks ago. And that's a great success. People are using the lights. I should say that the paddle courts also have lights. The locals tend to use the the local working people tend to use the courts later in the evening, so lights are essential. So what we're asking for today is phase 3 and phase 4. And as you can see, the whole thing has been laid out sort of from a master plan architectural standpoint to work in unison with the overall circulation patterns, which are intended to be very efficient roads to different aspects of the plot plan. Obviously, they're going to be ADA compatible. All of these, everything that we've created, including the raised paddle courts in the front, are all handicap accessible. We recognize that as important. So phase 3, we're proposing these 4 additional courts. And one of the things we've realized in this last season in phase 2 and people playing there is that there really isn't a good shelter space to get out of the sun and rain. So we're proposing in phase 3, in addition to the 4 courts, to have a open air sun rain shelter to offer some protection there. And again, stadium seating for all paddle courts because of the social aspect and tournament aspects that we are hoping to encourage. We're essentially doubling the size of the overall capacity in terms of people. And so therefore we're also have doubled the capacity for parking, which you can see in the upper area, in the upper portion of the drawing. And we're additionally expanding some parking spaces into phase 1. Again, creating handicap accessible areas as required. Phase 4 is the phase 4 is to include these tennis courts, all-weather tennis courts, which it's our hope that will be operational throughout the entire year, depending on weather. This is extremely important, I feel, as a lifelong Rackets player and a member of this club for over 30 years, and currently the head coach for the girls' high school tennis team. The access to a vibrant place where kids can go and interact with other Rackets players, that energy is going to really vitalize, I believe, the high school tennis program, certainly, which is only 5 years old, but is really coming on strong. This year it certainly has. And we're very excited, in particular, with the proposal of the tennis backboard court. For those of you around my age, where indoor facilities when I was a kid weren't available, people would just go bang against the wall. There's nothing wrong with that. We're never going to have on this island, I expect, a indoor closed facility that would likely lift like the Vineyard, our toughest high school opponents. They have an entire indoor facility and have great advantage against our kids because of that. So we recognize we're not going to have that, but this is about as good as we can get. It's a dedicated backboard court, which means that the balls are coming back and it's a full size, meaning that there's no abbreviation of whether you're practicing your backhand, forehand, or over serves or anything. In addition to that, we're proposing an all-weather ping pong area and 2 additional bathrooms to accommodate this additional number of people. The 3 tennis courts will also have a couple of wind shelters on them and stadium seating. I'm really excited about this overall, this master plan and this movement forward to help the community. I look forward to moving forward with your blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. My last point that Luke brought up, and I forgot, is we had moved to the board to not charge any player under 18 going forward. We really want to encourage. I met with Diane O'Brien at the high school, and we traded notes about when the courts or facilities, and her challenge was a really interesting meeting, which I will not take my time here for that, but maybe one day I would. But I've talked to Denise and the rest of the board. We're not going to charge high school kids to come on and use our facilities. It's just wrong. So I throw that out as a closing. Ken, that's it for me and my side. I think we might have gone over about 5 minutes, but we are certainly welcome to take any questions anyone has.
Well, Mark, I wanted to start with two questions. One for Luke, and I was interested in what the surface of the tennis courts were going to be. And then secondly, for you and or Luke, are there any ADA requirements? And if so, how are they met with respect to this proposal?
I can answer the surface one for you, although I would like to turn over to Luke. North Shop has really, really great courts. I've talked to a number of people. It's a kind of synthetic turf, not unlike what you might see on a football stadium. And if it gets too fast, you can sand it and slow it down. I spoke with a member who lives there last night, and I asked Janice, who used to be our bookkeeper, she said, I've been playing, and now I have to come over to paddle. It's getting too cold. And I said, how do you like the court? She says, I love them. I said, are they too fast? She said, no. And that person who handles the maintenance for North Shop, I've already been in touch with, and he, for a very affordable fee, will keep and maintain those courts. But other surfaces would take a daily person. So we're not going to go that way. So I can give you the exact term for the surface. But if you know anybody at North Shop and you want to go look at those courts, that will be the surface. I'm going to let Luke handle the ADA question. I think he brought that up, that everything was. But Luke, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think, the game of tennis has many different surfaces. So I think what we're proposing is another surface. The surface that Mark's referring to is kinder for the elderly in terms of, on your joints and your knees. It's got a cushion to it. It's soft. It's not like a hard court, which is a little more brutal on the body. So we feel like this option is sort of like a compromise between clay, which is very high maintenance surface, and hard court, which is actually very expensive and needs, down the road, tends to need more repairs. As far as the ADA goes, we can, you're aware of the current club. I mean, it's all ramped up to the existing paddle courts in accordance with the building code. And the surfaces will either be brick or they'll be a hard ADA compliant surface. If you look at your master plan, you can see the areas that are shaded in orange. Those are the travel ways for general public, but those would be the hardscape or ADA compliant surface areas that one would travel to. And all courts will be ADA accessible in terms of widths of the doorways to them, and the transfer from traveled surface to court surface.
Thank you.
Including the bathroom.
Questions from other committee members?
I have some questions, Mr. Chairman.
Linda?
Let's go back to the ADA thing. I believe Luke or Mark were just going to say that the bathrooms are going to be ADA compliant as well.
Yes. Yeah, they already are. Our two existing ones are ADA compliant, and the new ones would be as well.
I think it's a laudable project. I'm always the one who ends up asking this question. We've got $9 million worth of requests, and less than half of that we're anticipating getting back to spend. Have you decided if we could only do a portion of this project? Have you done priorities? Will you accept just the 3 new pickleball courts, or would you rather go with the tennis courts? I mean, where do you see the priority for this year, for this has to be a multi-year funding?
That's a great question. I have given that some thought. We do everything at the board level with as much input from our membership. The first thing I think we all would agree we do is that we would clear the land, grade it, obviously they call it GRAD, grade the land, remove all the stumps, make it a level surface, bring the surveyors out. That costs about $150,000, which we can do in the fall. And we will explore that. The land bank has a machine that does that and has offered to lend it, and that might reduce that cost by half. Then we would wait for the results of this meeting. I don't spend money in my life that I don't have. So we will wait for your generous contribution to our association and then map out a plan. The thing is, and that's not for here, that would be for our board. Having talked to Diane, talked to so many people on island that are landscapers and construction people who are helping me, I want to make a bumper sticker out of it. The longer you wait, the more it will cost. Nantucket 2021. We saw the parking lot. I had to choose what kind of stuff to use. I chose this kind of nice stuff. We won't have to regrade it for 5 years. It took $15,000, more than I thought. The guy who did the work said it would be $27,000 if we did it 6 months later to a year. We don't have the materials, and it doubled in price. To answer your question, Linda, I'm going to move as fast as possible, because if we can find a way to afford it, either through you or other means, to do it faster, we will save money. There's no question in my mind that if we delay a year or 2 or 3, we'll look back on this time and saying, wow, 980,000. Those were the good old days. So I've brought that up to the board and everybody on the sound of my voice. Do I want to do it affordably? Absolutely. But I want to do it well, which we have done well with the pickle courts. And I want to do it quickly. Probably the demand, it's 2 separate demands. The passion for pickle in our club, we have no tennis players yet. Once we know that we are going to put tennis courts down, long-range planning part of my job, I'm anticipating well over 100 members who are only interested in playing tennis. That brings us to almost 500 members. And then what Denise referred to as how do we manage such a club? Because you would be able to use all 3 and do the tennis players do this, and that's for another time. We are looking, as the high school is, exponential growth on the island and exponential need for recreational sports, which we all we can all talk about. And the faster we can get this done and constructed, either through loans, through the CPC, through the land bank, through our own way, I'm going to push to do it all as fast as possible in one fell swoop. You save money by building the 7 courts at one time, then you do 4 pickle courts, then come back in another season, bring all the equipment back, bring all the builders back, and then build the 3 tennis courts. You are, as we all know in our own lives, you would be paying twice.
That's almost the same argument as every single project that we've seen in the last, I don't know, Ken and I, 16 years now.
Okay.
The issue is we are limited with funds, and if we give you the entire amount, that would be a quarter, if not more, of the funding that we have. And we've got housing, we've got historic preservation. My point is, it's hard for you to prioritize, but I see the pickleball courts there. But my issue is, no matter what we give you, you're okay with, even if it doesn't cover the whole thing or cover all the pickleball courts. Some people say, no, we don't want partial funding because it doesn't really push the project forward. Are you willing to take whatever we can give you and then you build off of that?
Yes, we are, and we were thinking about that. And I also wanted to point out to the committee that this is a one-time request. When we get let's say we're fortunate enough to get this funds, we're not going to be back next year, the next year after that, the year after that, or 20 years from that. And when you talk to people, you're going to go, oh, how are the tennis courts? Oh yeah, we funded that in 2021 once. We'll take it from here. Once we build them, this association and our board will fund if we have to be maintained, if there has to be some employees, if there has to be some other things that we can't see. We're not coming back to the CPC to say, hey, we have our hand out again. If you give us, to answer your question directly though, Linda, if you give us the money, we'll gratefully say thank you, and we'll move forward as a board, as an association to prioritize. But not to be redundant, we would like it all and then put it all up so that we only ask it once, we build it once. And then 20 years from now, whoever's the board president, and it's certainly not going to be me, will say, wow, I haven't had to go to the CPC in 20 years. There's no need to. We don't need any help from you in the last 19. We need it once.
I appreciate that, but you got to understand where we're coming from as well. So
Linda,
we'll
you've made your
obviously
point.
debate it. So
Can I
we'll move.
make one point?
Linda, you made your point. Any other commissioners want to respond? Or
I'd like to respond, Ken.
John?
I'm just looking at the budget proposal, and in reference to Linda's question about if we could not grant the full funding, partial funding, in combination with the plan here and looking at the budget, phase 1 is complete, phase 2 is complete. If phase 3 were to be completed with the 4 pickle courts, the parking, and also the land clearing on the remaining land, it looks like we'd be able to, out of the budget estimated expenses, backtrack and back out the 3 tennis courts and hitting wall, because that appears to be in phase 4, which is at the end of the property, and that expense is $500,000. So if the board determined that it couldn't fully fund it, to go ahead with the progression for the land clearing and to complete that up to phase 3, which only remain phase 4, it looks like you'd be able to backtrack out the 500 for the total of 480,000, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound correct?
Yeah,
Mark?
that would be the priority. I think you're right. The first thing, number 1, grade the land. So we're all good to go and survey it where everything would go. That's this fall. We'll do that immediately, before the holidays, before Joel. And then we can get in there for the pickle courts, and that doesn't take more than 30 days. The concrete has to set, and then we can do the viewing areas. So, back of the envelope, $500,000 gets you there. And then you have the land cleared for the tennis courts. Maybe, to Luke's point, that the hitting wall is so vital, and it's probably very affordable. Maybe we go and put the hitting wall up so kids can practice. And then we see where we are. This, I don't want to be redundant. We would love your funding. We're really enthusiastic about doing this quickly. Whatever you give us, we will meet as a board and an association and say, look, we want to get this done faster. That might take on some different ideas, which we do as a group. John, that's how we do it. So we would like it fully funded, obviously. You have your needs, I get it.
Any other questions for Luke?
Yeah, could I just make one appeal, please, to the heart? And it goes to this. When COVID hit a year plus ago, it goes to mental health. It goes to our local kids. It goes to outdoor activities and exercise. And I have to tell you, when COVID hit and this was tennis and paddle tennis, these sports on the island, this club skyrocketed because people had to get out. They had to find their health through their exercise, and the acceptable sociability that our health department said was good. And I think that was the beginning. The COVID almost triggered everything for the explosion towards what needs to happen here for the health of our community. it's not, this is why I'm asking you to come from the heart on this thing and to reach deep, because our kids need to get out, and they need to have alternative places to go that are perhaps different than what they're used to on this island. They're going through a tough time. So I'm telling you, that backboard tennis court is so important, I believe, for anyone who wants to get out and get some exercise that loves hitting balls. And there are a lot of people that don't even know they love to hit balls yet. There are people that came to our paddle club during COVID that didn't even know they love paddle until they met paddle. And so I would just ask that as you consider what you want to move forward with in terms of gifting to us, which we appreciate fully, please take into account my appeal here for the mental health aspects that this brings to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. We've heard the arguments. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners different than any that have been raised so far?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Neville Mitchell. I mean, it's a good project. I like the project and all, and I like the answer that you gave to Linda. I want to ask a question. Has the land bank given you a figure that they might be able to help you with if you need them?
It's a really good question. So I did not go to the land bank with an expectation that they would give me the money. Land is so valuable, I thought it would appear greedy.
Yeah.
And Neil turned to me and said, by the way, let us know if we can help financially. So what I said earlier is as much money, to answer your question accurately, is no, they have not come to me with an amount.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned in my answer to Linda, we're going to try and fund this through our own cash, bank loans, you, of course, CPC, land bank, and we'll go to them and say, hey, we'll go foundations, associations. I'm the board, and I'm capable of making a plan and getting the money and seeing from all aspects. So to answer your question, they looked at me and said, like a wink and a nod. It was a very quick meeting, by the way. You got the land, don't buy, you don't have to make a big pitch. Any questions? And we were out of there, but he had mentioned, yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. I'm only asking because it wasn't the proposal here. So, and then, it was mentioned. Other than that, I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from any other commissioners?
Mr. Chairman Savarino,
Tim?
I'd like to ask just one quick question if I could. And that is, if the group had to pick between phase 3 and phase 4, would you come down on any particular side? Do you think the tennis courts are more important than the pickleball courts? Just like to hear your thoughts on that quickly.
That's a board decision, Tim. And I would have to predict that. My short answer would be, we have a lot of paddle and pickle players. We're not a tennis club yet. So my thinking would be that we would build the pickle courts. But, I would try to get it all done at once, which we've talked about it. But again, I'm one voice and I would lay out the options. Denise, do you have any opinion on that? You're tied into the community as well as I am, if not more.
I really, really liked what Luke had to say. COVID was unbelievable. I've been approached by a variety of agencies in town about the use of the pickleball courts. I think, it is a difficult situation to try to decide between tennis and pickleball. However, I think pickleball tends to be an easier sport for all different ages to manage. And so I personally would probably opt to do that first. I think we need public tennis courts desperately on the island because we only have jetties. But the demand right now, when we have our drop-ins, we probably have 25 to 30 people waiting on the sidelines to get on the courts every single time. So the demand is there. I think we should build those courts. And we we desperately need to get the tennis courts. So we'll figure out a way to do that financially, one way or another.
Thank you, Denise. Any other questions from any of the committee? Hearing none, I would like to thank you, Mark and Denise and Luke, for a really very thoughtful, incredibly thorough and wonderful presentation that addresses both physical and mental concerns within our community. And we hear you loud and clear, but I hope you hear us loud and clear as well, that there is just so much you can do with hope. You have to do some stuff with dollars, and we have to figure out how to manage the dollars, and that's our responsibility.
We understand. Thank you so much for considering our proposal. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for a really well done proposal and an even better presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Glenna, would you now close them out of the presentation and then invite Posey in for her presentation that we're starting late.
Greetings all.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning, Posey. How are you?
Hey, Ken. Hello, everybody.
You know the drill. We're running a little bit late, so what we would ask is for you to sort of summarize the nuts and bolts of your request this time around, and then we'll open it up to questions. You can take as much time as you want, but just look, we're very familiar with who you are, what you've done, because we've funded you for a fair number of years. So really, if you could focus on what the requests are this year and why they are so important.
Great. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't thank CPC for our long and fruitful relationship and your support of our programs, and in particular, the infrastructure that we've been able to include onto the Community Farm Institute out at 168 Hummock Pond Road that has allowed the growth of agriculture on the island. And I think it benefits the tourist trade by having amazing produce on, at all the island restaurants. It's also allowed visitors and residents alike to access fresh food right from our farm stand at our farmers market and throughout retail stores on the island, except the Stop and Shop. And also, a program and programs that we're hoping to develop with the benefit of additional CPC funding to create even greater access to healthy food for our island community that, is suffering from food insecurity. So with that in mind, I'd love to talk briefly about what is now, I believe, our phase 6 through CPC. We are this year asking for some infrastructure that will help us to continue to grow out what we have. And we have 8 acres of land on land bank property. I look at the group assembled here, and the only one I know for sure that has been out to visit our farm and do a tour is Linda Williams. And I really enjoyed taking her out there. And I think she enjoyed seeing just how amazing this little 8-acre bounty is. I would love to take anybody else out who's interested, but for this year, we finally got our last acre from the land bank in March of this year. And one of our farmers went ahead and used all the remaining timbers and deer fencing. It was just really kind of cobbled together to keep the deer out of this back acre. And if you were to go out there now, you wouldn't believe what's out there. It's a lot of winter crops that are going to be made available throughout the season, root crops. So what we're asking for this year in our request for roughly $60,000 is sufficient deer fencing to keep the critters out of the back acre, which will include 3 gates that will allow our new tractor to access this property. We're pretty much tapped out on the existing 2 wells that we have that irrigate the 7 acres that had already been in development. So we're looking for a new well and pump that will be able to properly provide year-round irrigation to this new back acre. It is clear that the land bank is going through a process with the American Farmland Trust where they are identifying properties that can be opened up for additional agriculture. We're anticipating that there will be an RFP process with them later in the year or early in the spring. And we know that there are adjacent acres in the old Mount Vernon farm that run through the backside, in between our land and the Cisco Sanctuary, all the way out to the 4.5 acres on the corner of Hummock Pond Road and Barrett Farm Road. So when that land becomes available through an RFP, if we are successful, then this new well that we're requesting funding for will not only benefit the new acre that we got this year, but will allow us to expand into any adjacent acreage that were we to be successful in our request for additional acreage. So it's a little bit, useful to what we have going already, and it's hopeful that we can get additional acreage. We have this bee program, a mentor bee program that has 6 existing beekeepers on site, but our mentor beekeeper, Peter Brace, just had an introduction to beekeeping course. We had 15 people there, and of that group, 8 people have signed up and asked if they can become beekeepers on the farm under a mentoring program. So what we have learned this year is that if we don't put some sort of a screening around the bee yard, then in instances when we're going through a drought or it's really hot, those bees are kind of riled up and angry. And if we don't create a screening, they will come right out after the farmers who are on the adjacent field and, become pesky. So we're looking for a vegetated screen for the bee yard, and we've identified with the help of folks at Surfing Hydrangea what would be appropriate native plants that we can use that will be evergreen to surround the bee yard. We're also looking to expand into an area we refer to as the food forest and growing more fruit on the property. And we're looking to install lots of blueberry bushes, both high and low. So we've included a budget item of $1,900 for that. And to make that area more efficient, we are looking to install some irrigation in the food forest. We've already planted 10 persimmon trees. We have some apple and pear trees that we have salvaged from different parts of the farm and looking to install those, but without the irrigation, they won't survive. So there's a line item for a 6,200-ish in additional irrigation for the food forest. And finally, just to enhance and beautify and make more pleasant, also prevent hapless drivers from pulling up in front of this education farm stand building right at the front of the farm. We're looking to install a split rail fence, put in a bike rack, and put some planting around it that makes the appearance of the farm stand all that more inviting. So the total of those items runs to just under $60,000, and that is the request I have for CPC for this year.
All right, thank you, Posey. Before I turn to the commission, to the new commissioners, I just want you to know that I've researched the act, and all of these items fall within the definition of capital improvements to the property, which is along the same lines as the reasoning that we've been able to use in the past for funding all of the activities and the additional materials, wells, and fencing and stuff like that that has been funded by the CPC. So happy to open up any questions for Posey with respect to their particular request this year.
I have some comments, Mr. Chairman.
Linda?
I suggest anybody who wants to stop out there. I've had an extensive involvement out there. I just put it on the record. I did help them with their building permits pro bono to navigate through the building department process for their hoop barns and a couple of shed moves and a new shed building out there. It's fascinating out there. You have no idea how extensive the property really is, how far back it goes and what goes on in those hoop barns. I was fascinated by it. I have 10 black toes and 10 black fingers. I can kill cactus in a heartbeat. But this is quite something from the first time we gave them money many years ago to start setting it up to what it's become now. It's thriving. farmers and produce. It's in the beehive thing. It's pretty amazing. So I would suggest anybody between now and making any decisions that you take a run out there. She's always out there, or one of the farmers is always out there. And take a look at it, and especially the new farm stand. It's quite impressive. So I suggest you all take a look out there. Ken, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you, Linda. Any other questions or comments from the committee as to Mark?
Yes, I too have been out there shopping for produce, and it's I didn't get into the back property, and I look forward to maybe getting a tour from you, Posey, on that. But I toured the front property and the peak in the greenhouses, and it's a fabulous operation. It's a community-involved operation as well as servicing our summer residents, but it's very involved in a year-round community. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have on Nantucket. So I support this project.
Neville?
I have been with this project, I mean, just on my own from the beginning as well. I've also had a tour. I go out there a lot. I've seen the whole thing. Just ask one quick question, Posey.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate, you probably answered it. The new well will support all the irrigation and everything for any extensive programs that you might have.
Well, we have currently 2 wells on the property. And last year's funding, which we are about to commence, it's taking forever to get these well folks to respond. I think I put in daily calls or emails, but I'm on the threshold of installing 2 high efficiency pumps on the existing wells. Our objective is to try to make the farm as close to net zero as possible through our 3 solar arrays and improving efficiency on everything that we've added. But in our request to install a 3rd well, honestly, the 2 existing wells barely provide sufficient irrigation for all of the acreage that exists. And the new acre that we finally got as part of our total of 8 acres is kind of affecting the access to irrigation for one of our farmers, Dan from Washashore Farm, on his back 3 acres. So, you know, the new well will really help to sort of ease the burden on the new acre. And should we be successful through the RFP process that we think is forthcoming in the next couple of months, and if we're successful in getting the adjacent property, which is now Land Bank has leased it out to Dean Long for grazing his goats and horses. And there may be a better place for him to do that. But all we can do is hope that, you know, we'll be successful, because contiguous property just is more efficient. But yes, that 3rd well is designed to not only cover the back acre, it will also, you know, ease our ability to be productive should we be successful in adjacent acreage.
Thank you. And I also want to say that is one of the premier programs that we have here on Nantucket. Cannot say too much about it.
Well, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from any of the other committee members?
I just have one question, Mr. Chair, through you.
John?
Not to Posey. Posey, I notice when I go to the dump all the time, there's such a community-based recycling of compost. A lot of the landscapers bring things in, and just local community members take it out in a compost fashion for their gardens and lawns and things. Is there anything like that you all do, or is it the operation too small to really support, you know, the traffic of pickups coming in and out?
What a wonderful question. We did receive through an outside grant this year from Remain Nantucket, a big old John Deere tractor. And much of our hope for use of that tractor was to enhance our ability to do composting on the farm. We have an area that is actually used by the farmers to take their spent crops, any wood chips that we can get, any adjacent neighboring horse farms that have manure that we can, you know, put into windrows. without actually becoming a site for compost, because that is complex and requires different licensing from the state. If we were to take food scraps, for example, it would require different licensing. And also the land bank has not necessarily permitted us to create a place where we can take in products from outside and use it on their land. It's a bit dicey on what we should be able to take in. I think it's all supposed to be produced on site, but so long as we're using it on site, they allow us to take in certain things. But we're being very gentle and gingerly about what we can take in and how it's immediately put to use through a curing process that wouldn't put us offsides with both DPW, with state laws, and also, what our arrangement is with the land bank. So, more than anything, I would love to create a composting program and use it as part of a membership program to get, we don't have members of Sustainable Nantucket because it's hard to think of what we could offer. We're coming up with something, but to me, if we could offer a couple of bags of compost with membership through, through taking stuff that was already being diverted to the dump, I'd love to do that. I'm just working through the process by which it would be acceptable to all the parties that I've just mentioned.
Any other
Thank you.
questions from any of the other committee members? Seeing or hearing none, Posey, thank you for once again doing a very thoughtful and thorough presentation. I too have had the opportunity to walk through a good portion of it, but not really the back part of it, as a result of my wife bringing me out there with Beth in terms of your fundraising activities. But thank you so very much. And is there any additional information that anybody wants from Posey prior to our hearings relative to making allocations? Seeing or hearing none, thank you for that. And we will be getting back to you once we have made a determination as to where we are. Fortunately, as Linda would always say, we have about almost double the amount of requests than the amount of monies available. But this is a request that I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to, assuming everybody feels comfortable with, find a way to be able to move forward. So thank you again. And Glenna, if you would.
As always, thank you to CPC, and do let me know if I can take you on a tour.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Posey. And Glenna, would you invite our next presenter in, which is, I think,
Mrs.
Betsy
Grubbs, she's
Grubbs
already
of
here.
Wisconsin Trust.
Elizabeth Grubbs, she's here.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Clement Jerkes. I'm the president and chair of the board of the Wisconsin Trust. And we are here in our offices. We want to thank you so much to the committee for considering our grant for the phase 2 restoration and preservation of the Sanctity Head Lighthouse. In the Wisconsin Trust office today with me, you will hear from, well, we're all here to answer all your questions, but Robert Franklin is here. He is chair of our Lighthouse Committee. Rob Benchley is here. He is our Lighthouse Keeper. And Betsy Grubbs is here. She is the Wisconsin Trust Executive Director. She has been on a board member, a former board member. She's also been responsible for heading our 2 big campaigns, one for the Lighthouse Campaign Fund for moving the lighthouse, and one for the purchase of Ruddock Commons. And also here with us is preservation architect Marsha Vader. She has worked with the trust for about 3 years doing house histories of historically significant homes in and around Wisconsin, for which we are very grateful. And even more grateful, she prepared this proposal for us. So Marsha will present our proposal, and then the rest of us are available for any questions you might have after the proposal. So thank you all so much. Thanks for the great work you do for our community. And we are hoping this works out for us. Thank you. Here's Marsha.
Hi, I'm Marsha Vader, and of course I know many of you on the CPC, and I do thank you. We are today presenting our application for what we know as phase 2 of preservation for the Sanctity Lighthouse. This is of course in the category of historic preservation. And we are presenting this work for really one of Nantucket's most beloved historic icons on the island that is in need for funding for continued preservation. What I think many of you would know how important this structure is for the island. It has a long history, and it continues to be one of the most visible historic structures on the island. It has thousands of visitors each year. So whether you're by land or by sea, it's an amazing historic resource. Whether you're out for your daily walk or you're passing by even on a bus tour, it's an amazingly significant resource on the island. What we are presenting with this application is phase 2 preservation work, which is to protect and to stabilize both exterior and interior surfaces and components of the lighthouse structure. This is in-depth work, and I think for those of you that are familiar that were here in the year 2008, when the Sconset Trust took ownership of the lighthouse and embarked on phase 1. And that was in itself a historic event because the lighthouse was moved from the eroding bluff. And as I said, the Sconset Trust took ownership at that time and has been continually presenting that as the site that's open to the public and for all educational interpretation at the site. The lighthouse is one of the oldest in the country. It's the only one left on the island that is still the original lighthouse. It was built in the year 1850. So here we are, about 170 years later, with a brick structure that is located on one of the highest elevations of the island. It is, of course, listed individually on the National Register of Historic Places. And you try to think in its location, it is, of course, subject to incredible exposure to the weather. And most of what we are presenting to you as part of this application are work items that are preservation items that are phase 2 because they were not addressed. They were not able to be addressed as the phase 1, which was an immense focus on the relocation. So the work items include the removal of some interior corroding iron anchors and a resulting end wall repair. There is work to be done on the ship's ladder, on the welding and failure points in the welding. There are certain coatings that have become impermeable coatings that had been applied prior to the ownership on the workroom area that need to be removed. I mean, all of these items are listed in the project scope. They are all ultimately work that that has to do with the penetration of water and moisture. So whether it's rusting or moving through, so that we lose the integrity of the historic materials, the fabric, the coatings. And so all of this work has been the result of an on-site inspection from ICC Commonwealth. So we are pleased to say that this particular contractor is the contractor that we worked with during the move in 2008. They know the structure very well, and the Sconset Trust has worked very well with them. They have performed an on-site inspection, and we have reviewed the material. There's been research and have been establishing the compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties. I think in the scope of the work, we are proposing in the measure of economy for the structure that we work during the off season, the shoulder season. So we're proposing that the work would begin next September, and it would be completed by Thanksgiving of the same year, 2022. As you're probably aware, with many projects on the island, the mobilization of the crew, this company that works all over the country on incredible large preservation structures, much of the cost comes from the mobilization itself. So we are proposing to do this work during one mobilization to limit the further cost. The proposal that we're requesting is for just over $250,000 for funding from the CPC, with the Sconset Trust making a commitment to raise and fund just over $69,000 of the total sum for the project, which is $320,000. I think there's one aspect of the project that many people may not be aware, that the Sanctity Head Lighthouse is actually owned by the Sconset Trust. It is their one and only structure that they do own in their full commitment to conservation and preservation on the island. They do have, now that they have taken ownership, they do have Rob Benchley, who is a full-time year-round lighthouse keeper. And they have continued to present the entire site as an open recreational site for anybody walking, for anybody arriving, and present it as an educational opportunity on the island. Another aspect of that ownership is that the ownership essentially came from the US Coast Guard, who continued to operate the lighthouse as a navigational aid. And so it's a collaboration effort that also happens to include the Sanctity Head Golf Club, because the lighthouse, from the move in 2008, in moving away from the eroding bluff, the best location happened to be on golf course land. So we have a lighthouse from 1850 that is owned by the Sconset Trust, is operated by the US Coast Guard, is maintained by the Sconset Trust and their lighthouse keeper, Rob, but it's on land of the Sanctity Head Golf Club. So as part of the application, we have included all of those legal documents that attest to that unusual and unique ownership and operation. And I should also mention that during that project, the Massachusetts Historical Commission, in recognizing its significance, has placed an easement on the structure. So all of the work that we're proposing is in accordance and compliance with that easement. And it is a most unusual project. It is phase 2 work to continue the preservation, to maintain the structure. And I think that as a structure on the island that is beloved by all and is such an amenity for the island as a whole, we thank you really deeply for your consideration for the project. And as Clement has mentioned, there are members here of the board and Betsy Grubbs who are here to answer any further questions.
Thank you. Do you want to have any further, or is there any formal part of your presentation, or you just want to have it open to questions from us at this point in time?
Yes, I think we're open for questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. All right. From the committee,
I'm
questions.
here. I got questions.
Linda.
Normally I start off with, if there's a priority and we only have so much money to give out, we've got $9 million in requests. I don't think this is one of those that we can parse out and say this is a priority and that is not a priority. So I'm not going to even ask that question here. I've been in the building. I'm one of the few people that have been actually up in all 3 of them, including the original Great Point. And I appreciate all 3 of them. I love lighthouses. I know there are pockmarks in the side of it from golf balls hitting it. It's truly the golf ball. They're just littering the ground. And I think the stewardship of the Sanctity Trust has been phenomenal for this structure. Has there been any discussion about the fact that it might actually have to move on to the fairway at some point if that bluff continues to erode? Have we had any conversation about the fact that it may have to move again at some point, though it's on a pretty substantial base?
Betsy Grubbs, we monitor it very carefully, Linda, and right now we're doing pretty well in terms of the erosion. Interestingly, if you stood at the lighthouse and looked straight down, most of Baxter Road would go before the lighthouse is compromised. So we feel that we've got time. Obviously, who knows, but we feel pretty good about the location and the erosion. And Rob can probably address that a little more too.
Musical chairs, I take it you were
I
all.
know. Well, it's much easier than moving the machine. So we only have one laptop in Wisconsin, so.
And an antenna on top of the house.
I've been keeping a visual eye on the edge of the bluff. When it was moved back in 2008, it was pretty much back to where it had been originally, which is about 250 feet. Now, I haven't measured it with a tape measure, but I'd say maybe we've lost 3 or 4 feet since the move. And as Betsy Grubbs said, when you look due south down Baxter Road, there's more real estate between the lighthouse and the edge of the bluff than there is probably anywhere, any structure along that part of the coastline.
Well, that's reassuring. And this phase 2, you think that's it for a while once we stabilize that metal? I remember the corrosion going on in there and up on top as well.
Yes. I can't predict what the erosion rate is going to be, but it's going to be for a good long while. And as you mentioned, the corrosion, those
brackets,
those brackets, and they end up expanding and destroying the structure itself, just as a footnote on that. But just from my observations, and as you know, I've photographed a lot of erosion in the last 35 years here. We got a lot of time.
I'm encouraged by the fact that you raised what, 69,000 on your own?
We will,
yes. Yes, we will.
The wonderful thing we have found with fundraising, it's people are very supportive and wonderful about coming to the front, and we will We have a gala coming up that we will dedicate to part of those that will be funding, and the community will come forward with that. So we're very excited about that. We'd like to have the involvement.
Again, I have to commend the Sconset Trust for your stewardship of this structure. It is iconic, and I think you're doing a marvelous job with keeping it up and maintaining it and preserving it. Thank you.
Thank you. We love it. And if I probably wouldn't wear out as quickly if so many children didn't hug it. But all those kisses and hugs catch up with the
golf balls. And the golf balls.
That's right, the golf balls. Go ahead.
Any further comments, Linda, and if not, other questions from other members of the committee?
Mr. Chair, through you. Just a question about the safety of it. I know there's going to be extensive work being done to it to secure it and make it safe. Will it be still open to the public at some point, or is it the eventual point where we just appreciate it for the historical structure that it is and just leave it off limits to actually the public using the inside or accessing the inside?
No, it will definitely be open to the public and accessible. Not only the structure itself, the interior, but the land surrounding it, which of course is an interpretive exhibit of its own. So a number of the items on the proposed budget includes the interior stair. And for that very reason that you mentioned, which is a great question, to stabilize and secure, to make it safe. At this time, and since the trust took ownership, it has been open to the public kind of by appointment. So if any island school group or any group were to call the Sconset Trust, you can bet Rob Benchley would be there in a flash to escort them and give them a tour of the structure. And that will continue. It's a very, very important aspect of the stewardship of the lighthouse by this trust.
Thank you.
Any questions from any of the other committee members? I have two questions, one a comment and a question. Unfortunately, your presentation provides a contingency of $18,600 that needs to be removed because we can in fact not fund contingencies with respect to any of the projects that we support.
Okay.
And then my second is a comment or a question. Will the work be able to, because of the fact of its historic nature and the easements and stuff like that, the work needs to make sure it complies with the Secretary of the Interior's standards with respect to restoration and repair. And I presume that any contractor that you have would in fact be able to make sure that whatever work they do complies with those published standards.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And it's a number one on the formulation of this proposal. So I have worked closely with ICC directly on all of those work items. And our research has included whatever processes, whatever materials they're proposing, that they are appropriate for the materials, for the structure, and that we are maintaining that compliance with those standards as well as with our easement with Mass Historical. And I think that in terms of the contingency, the Sconset Trust will put that into their column for and add that to whatever we are able to raise for funding. So we would add that to the 69,000 and commit to that. So I mean that is theirs. I'm sure I understand that that you cannot be covering that, but we would certainly maintain that, because we are aware in working on historic structures that we can put the pricing out, but we're never quite certain what's going to be when we get into the structure. So thank you.
For sure. Are there any questions from any other members of the committee? Well, I think you've heard from the committee that we are excited about the fact that Sanctity Trust is looking after this really iconic structure. I share with you the structure with respect to the ownership and maintenance is clearly unique on this island, and it's something really very interesting in terms of showing the kind of collaboration that can exist between public, private, and nonprofit on this island. So you're a beacon, if I want to for the rest of the community.
We like that. We like that. Thank you.
Couldn't help that, John. Thank you very much, and we will go forward, and you'll hear from us after the committee's had a chance to make its recommendations as part of the warrant that needs to be presented by the middle of November. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And then Glenna, if you would invite our last presenter in, Kathy Kelm, for the NISDA. Thank you.
Yes.
That was so good.
That was so well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, once I got into it, starting off, yeah, I was a little bit nervous.
They need to mute themselves.
Yeah. Well, at least we know that they're happy with their presentation.
Kathy and Denise, good morning. Can you unmute yourselves?
Here.
We can't hear you.
There you go.
Okay, there you
Good
go.
morning. We're really glad to be here. I'm Kathy Kelm, the director of the Nantucket Island School of Design, and this is Denise Allen. We're an administrative team at NISDA, which is wonderful. And so we're here, and we are asking for our 4th CPC grant. And before we go there, we just want to thank you so much for the previous 3. We have been working diligently and really round the clock since we got the first one to actually achieve the objectives that we had in those various grants. And just to recap it, because it's been a bit, it's been 2 years since we've come to you. The first grant was to begin the historic preservation of Seaweed Farm, which is also known as Eat Fire Spring and Sexton Farm. And it's the last standing farm that has the spirit of the historic farms that were on Nantucket, many of them, hundreds, and the last 2 standing silos. And so on the first grant, we received $132,856 to begin the preservation of basically the exterior of the building. And what's happening now as people come out is that they just are astounded at how well it looks. And it's not just the look, it's the fact that it's being preserved. The second grant continued that along. That was $158,597. And then the third grant also worked on the exteriors of the long barn and bringing the waterproofing that is necessary in the long barn up to snuff. That actually has been something that's continued, and the water both at the farm, at the long shed, and on the driveway has become an issue. So that's something we've been working on. So the focus of this grant is that we, in doing the historic restoration and the preservation of the exterior and how it looks historically, of course, it was also related to the structure, but we also began to realize that it was really important to focus on the structural integrity. And so that's the focus of this particular grant, the structural integrity of the buildings and the foundations, and also the silo. What's happened in the last 2 years is that we've had a lot of very hard downpours, but also the water level has risen It's about 2 feet below the barn, which is hard to believe because as you look at the farm, it comes up from Polka's Harbor, but it's actually the water table is right under it. And so what's been happening in the long shed is that the Eat Fire Springs and the runoff from the hills above have been coming into the long shed. And in the last grant, we talked about remediation of water, but we've had to do a lot more on our own. Besides your grant funds, we have put in a French drain. We have thankfully had people like Don Bracken, and he has suggested structural engineers for the silo because something's happening to the silo as far as water damage, which is really unusual. We immediately were in touch with a specialist and they said that this is not unusual. It's 50 years old, but one silo is being affected and the other isn't. And it's really important that we do something about this or we will have a problem with actually it's standing because the cracks in the silo, which began maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, have been working their way down the bands. And we had a specialist come in, a structural engineer, and between the time we called him to come and the time he came, which was probably a month and a half, the cracks moved down 3 or 4 bands. So this is really important. Let's see. So with this particular grant, it has to do with the silos and the structural integrity in the long shed. It also has to do with landscaping, the historic landscaping. But the big thing that we have to share with you is that we have had an incredible thing happen. This is amazing. In our last grant, in grant 3, we asked if we could move the heifer barn, and we had an amount for that in there. And thankfully you said no. And of course we wanted to do that. And that is actually in the deed restriction that is, we are now told, coming in December. And we have a letter, an email to send you that will give you what's been happening with the deed restriction. But what's happening is that the heifer barn has been something that we wanted to recreate. And we asked that in our last grant. And we asked for the funding for that. And again, I said, we thank you for saying no, because what happened is that the land bank has bought the property next to the school. We are so excited about this. Eric Savetsky called and was sharing this with me. And I said, I'm so excited, Eric. And he said, yeah, but we have to move that barn. And I said, the heifer barn? And he said, yes, do you want it? So what's happening is, thankfully you said no, and now we're being gifted the actual heifer barn to bring it back. The land bank is next door, and it's probably been moved like 300 feet. And so we've been out at the school with Toscana and with various engineers working on how that's going to happen. But the blessing is that the land bank literally is giving us the actual heifer barn to return to its actual position. So that's very exciting. But what we have found in actually researching what our part of the responsibility will be is it's a sizable amount of money that we are going to need to have in order to actually do it. Because we have to dig an excavation. There are already existing cement blocks on the property that were there because of when the heifer barn was actually there. Those have to be removed. There's building a foundation, having a structural engineer do the design for that. So there's a whole myriad of things, but we've got it organized, and we are meeting with terrific people in order to accomplish that. And then the safety systems. That's one thing that we are so aware of. We now have an existing alarm system in the dairy barn, but as we have the long shed and we fix that up, that we want to make sure that we maintain it and we're out of town. And then when the heifer barn is there, we would want to do that. So that's why we put the safety systems in. So the total amount that we're requesting is major. It's $734,023. What we have had given to us to match that is 524, and it's in a variety of ways. It's what we think the value of the heifer barn would be if we tried to recreate it at this point. And it's also the engineering and the foundation and the septic and, you know, all those, not septic, we paid for that ourselves. And then we have personally in the sense of the school has funded like 220,000 plus on various things that needed to be done to help the whole process along. One of those was that we had to do, is it an IA system, a new septic system? Another one was in one of the previous grants, we had asked the CPC for funding to recreate the historic driveway that goes around the farm, because we needed to change its location. The end of it was on the neighbor's property. And you said no to that. I mean, you said yes to a lot, but that was one of the things you didn't fund. So we went ahead and we actually did that. And that was like 53,000 to redo that driveway because it had to go through the wetlands. And so we needed to replicate wetlands, double that. So there's been that kind of thing happening. Also in the long shed, because of the rising water, it's seeping through the cement block along the back of the 105-foot long shed. And so we've had structural engineers looking at it, and Don Bracken has been incredibly helpful in putting us in touch with the right people. And what's happened is that we've put in a French drain that's 105 feet long. We've learned so many things. We didn't even know these things existed, but we put in the drain. And next week, Jim Hughes is going to come and connect it to the swale that's near the wetland that is now by the driveway. And the reason it's there is because we had to have it there because we put the driveway around the other side. So it's kind of interesting that things have been building one on each other and kind of coming to a good solution. So I think that's what I can share with you right now. I don't know, Denise, do you have anything that you feel would be good to share?
You know, the deed restriction that is in the works and hope to receive by December is up at the state, included the replication of the heifer barn.
Right.
And Nantucket Preservation Trust is thrilled that we have the opportunity to actually return the original heifer barn to its location rather than replicate the barn.
Right.
So that is very exciting that the barn can return home. We have some historic photos, and they were included, of the barn on a Barrett truck being moved over to Dr. Voorhees' property when it left the.
Yeah, Dr. Voorhees purchased the properties, I think most of the, quite a bit of acreage from Abe Glasser. And when he and Mary moved into the farmhouse, he decided that he would move the heifer barn over next to their house, which is a very short distance, so that Mary Voorhees would have a quilting studio. So that's how it got over there.
And what's great with this move is it's a simple move. We don't have to go onto the Walwinnett Road. It's just going to go right back across the way it came. And what's wonderful that the land bank is next door. The spring will have access, you know, the public. It's really going to be a destination on Nantucket for the public and community to come and use our facilities and come out and see the land bank and the farming that will be happening there, and have access to the spring. So it's pretty exciting.
We're really looking forward to starting programs again. I mean, that's our purpose for being. We're a community center and an art center, and we haven't been able to do this like for 3 years because of the various challenges we've had with just getting things done on time. And also the fact that we had COVID, and that I'm sure you all were impacted a lot, and we certainly were. It stopped some of the crews being able to come because they got COVID, and it backed things up. But we took a year off to come to you because we wanted to get everything in shape, and the quiet in order to go forward with various projects has actually been a blessing in disguise. I think that's it.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions from the committee?
As usual, it's me.
Go ahead, Linda.
I'm kind of concerned about the silos. I'm kind of concerned about the silos. They look spectacular. We paid a lot of money to have those redone by those guys that came up from Pennsylvania, I believe. And those guys come up and redo them.
Yes.
And I'm concerned that they're already being undermined.
Right.
If we only have so much money, let me get to that one first. We only have so much money. We've got $9 million in requests, and maybe we'll have just less than half of that to spend. Do you guys, are the silos the priority? And then what's next?
Okay. Just to address your concern, we are incredibly concerned, and we couldn't believe this was happening because just 3 years ago, he came and the silos had a lot of mold and weather, and they didn't have tops. So they accomplished putting on the tops, and they power washed, and they painted, and they repaired. And this was certainly unexpected. And in being in touch with, so I went to Don Bracken, who's been doing site planning and engineering for us. And he said, Kathy, what you need to do is get a silo structural engineer. You need a specialist. So there's 3 in the country. And there's a gentleman that we've been talking to in Michigan. And he said, I can work with you. You need to get somebody on the ground there that is a structural engineer, and we will figure out what's going on. And so they have been in Stephen Gone just came out last week, and they're going to be in touch, and they're going to see what we need to do. It's definitely a priority because the cracking is moving down. And I said, why is this happening? And they said it could be a function of age and weather. And the gentleman that did the repair, Franklin Silo Repair, said that he's seen this happen when silos get to be 50 years or whatever. It's interesting that one silo is totally okay. And from what I understand from the silo structural engineer, that's made with solid blocks, and they call them staves, but the silo that's cracking has open blocks where the weather can get down in. So it doesn't have, we don't think, we are getting expert advice on this, but we don't think that it has anything to do with the fact of how this was done previously. It's kind of a different issue, I think.
Well, if we could only give you partial funding, you'll take whatever funding we can give you, I take it.
Of course.
If you can only take partial, if we can only do so much of this project,
right?
Would silos be the first expenditure, and what's next and what's after that? I mean, I'm also curious as to whether the land bank's going to contribute for that move.
Pardon? Yes, they are. The land bank is gifting the barn itself.
Okay.
And to replicate that would have been much more than what we asked for 2 years ago. It's
not
like
giving you any funding for it.
Pardon?
Let's focus here for a second. They're not giving you any funding for it.
Yes, they are. They're giving us the farm, the barn, and they're giving us 100,000 toward moving it over.
Okay.
And the additional that we put in the grant is what we know is going to be extra. We were shocked at how much that came to, because there's so much that needs to be done.
All right. So after the silo priority, what's the next part of this project that's a priority?
The heifer barn.
Okay.
And then the long shed, and the safety systems and the landscape would not be. I mean, they're all important, but those are the most important as far as sequence goes.
And we gave some money to the long shed already, so we've got some investment in there.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
And we have also, by the way, invested. We paid for the French drain. We put like 10,000 toward water remediation in the last grant, and it's been much, much more than that. It's a big project to put in the French drain, but we're doing things with our funds in order to balance and assist going forward.
Okay. I think some of your problem with the groundwater may be the fact they have an open Sacagawea pond. So there's a lot of things that are.
That's interesting. That is.
The only reason I mentioned that is that our basement on Cliff Road filled up until they would open Hummock Pond. And
Oh,
that
that's
Hummocks would
interesting.
drain immediately upon the pond being opened. So there's a whole aquifer underneath that's connected. So
Right,
just finding it out.
right. Well, that's interesting, Linda, because this morning I got a call from Jesse at the land bank. And Denise and I had been out, and there's water literally pouring down the driveway, you know,
From
and
the land bank.
from the land bank land, but along the Fire Springs.
Yeah.
And it's also coming from the top. It's not just Fire Springs, it's more water. So that's interesting that you say that, because there's something more happening now. And maybe it's because there's been a bunch of houses built up there too.
Yeah. So I think there's a whole issue that has to be addressed as far as groundwater infiltration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from other committee members? Mark. Unmute, please.
Yes, what will the heifer barn do for your programs if we do pay for having it moved?
Well, it will increase our program space. But one of the things that we've wanted to do, and it's really a balance between these two objectives, is that we really wanted to return it because we want to recreate or have the original profile of the farm, which is going to make a huge difference. You can see the picture on the front of the application, and the heifer barn was sitting there. It'll be terrific for the program, and because we do need more space. And after we complete the restorations, the historic restoration and the structural restoration of the farm, what we're going to do is go to MCC, which is the Mass Cultural Council, for facilities development for the interior of the buildings, to accommodate the various partnership programs and programs that we're developing for the future.
And it's in very...
Mark, follow up.
Yes, on a related topic, Kathy, I read your 990 and I was a little troubled by your board of directors being family controlled. I wish you had a community-based board of directors that was more in control of NISDA than just a one family. And that's just a comment I have on.
Okay, thank you.
On the structure.
Yeah. Okay.
We look better. I need to have a island-based community board of directors.
Yeah, what we've had is a very small board of directors, and we've been in existence since '78. And the advice I got from the original lawyer was to keep the board small so that you can focus on your programs rather than relationships. And it's just worked really beautifully but I'm interested in your input. But we've had so many people that are advisors. You can see what's the list of people that are involved with the school. And that format has just been a flow for us, and we haven't been concerned because we've had so much input and participation from professionals and community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from committee members?
And
Neville.
yes. Hello, Kathy.
Hi.
I want to ask a question. Just one first thing I want to ask about is, and you probably explained it already. The French drain. Where does the water drain to, since the water table is so high?
Oh, you know what? The way they designed it is that the long shed is situated south-north. Okay, the back of it's south. And at the very top is where the water comes in along a stream that goes along the back of the building, which is Fire Springs. But also there's this deluge of water coming down the hill that's different now. It's saturating. So it goes into that, and it goes underground along the back of the long shed, and it goes out the long shed, and then Jim is going to connect it down to the swale and the wetlands, which will hopefully connect to the culvert the town has that takes it down to Pulpus Harbor.
Okay.
But it's a long tube that's very flexible so that it can absorb the water in as it comes through the building and
It absorbs the
alongside.
water. Okay.
Pardon? Yeah.
I understand. I understand. I was wondering, because I know there's a lot of water coming in from the harbor, because the harbor is high. And I also know there's a lot of water coming in from the springs.
Yes, there is. And actually this morning at like 8:15, I got a call from Jessie in the land bank. And she said that they were aware that they had this new water. It's basically, we had to have boots on to walk on their grass. It's so saturated. And they're going to have David Gray come out and look at what's going on. So hopefully that town participation will help us with what we're doing as well.
Okay. The next question I want to ask is about the deed restriction.
Yeah.
You haven't used any of your last funding of the 243,000. That had to do with the 50% thing that we had, right?
Oh, yes, thank you for asking that. What happened is that because we literally have an email to go to you because we felt it was important that we basically outline what's happened with the deed restriction and how it's taken so long, and how that all happened. And if you'd like, we could go over that a bit, but
right now it is at the state, between COVID and illness and with COVID, as you know, the town and the state shut down, and access to getting this done took much longer than had thought. But even up to COVID, this process started in 2017, and you'll see in the outline of our letter, which we will send to you, that the resources to do for Brian Pfeiffer to do any of the research, there really isn't any available. It took much longer, and the unique situation of the farm as a school and functioning, not just as a museum, but to be able to use the facility for generations to come and the needs be met as a school, was a little bit more complicated than just a building preservation.
They couldn't go to local archives in order to get the information.
I understand. I just want to get something just very, very basic. And just I did some research. Basically, the deed restriction right now has been signed by the town. Then
just recently.
And it has to clear preservation.
Preservation has approved it.
Yeah,
Preservation's approved. It just needs the Mass Historical Commission final approval. They're the third party.
In the preservation.
We signed it it was ready to go last March, and we signed it, but then because of COVID and the Board of the Board of Selectmen.
So after preservation is done with it, then it just goes to the state, right? I just want to get the timetable so the members understand. That's all. And that's the only stage that it's at right now, just getting those signatures on it.
Yeah, and the reason we haven't gone for the reimbursement that you spoke of is because we need to get the deed restriction before we can do that.
I understand. I just wanted the members to understand literally what is going on with the deed restriction now. It just needs 2 more signings and then it's done.
Yes, and Mary at Penn said that she felt that it would be back here by December. That's her estimate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Quickly,
John?
Mr. Chair. Yes, just looking at the gift from the land bank, and it is a generous gift to move it, and then also the $100,000. And I'm curious to see what the demo cost would have been if it would have been $100,000 or more from the land bank to just demolish the building.
We won't let that be demolished.
It's a historic building.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge.
So if you weren't able to take it, then they would be faced with obviously keeping it there and might not fit into what they were going to be using it for. So you said there's additional fees that would be needed to complete the move. And I'm just hopeful that maybe they would contribute a little more to get that over to you instead of being left with it.
We would
Also, the
Yeah, we'd
use
like
right
more.
now, the use right now, you mentioned it was historical, but now it's contemporary. When and if you were able to move it over, would you keep it as in its contemporary state, or would you bring it back to the original use?
One of
And-
the, excuse me, one of the requirements of PIN is that, and they approved this move, is that we restore it back to its original state.
Mhm.
And we embrace that. And that's one of the costs, that's part of the cost that we have on our side of the equation. Because in the original barn, there were sliding doors on north and south side, which have been taken off. And we're hoping that we can keep skylights that have been put in if they face away from Walnut Road, so they're not shown. But what we're going to have to do is there's a skylight that would be facing Walnut Road that has to go. And also there's going to be a hole in the middle of the side that faces Walnut Road because there's a connector right now that's going to be removed. So that's basically, we will be required, and we're trying to honor the historic look and also maybe keep a little bit of what the changes that have been made in order to use it, because it's nice to have more light.
As far as the historic use, it won't be the historic use because that was used for birthing the heifers.
heifer bar, the cows, right?
But it will
All
be,
right.
yeah, classroom space.
Well, but also once you get this building and bring it back, I guess, to the historical condition it was, do you have any idea of the maintenance that's going to require going forth in the future to obviously the expenses to maintain it?
What we're doing right now is we have a overview of a financial draft, which incorporates the 3 properties we have and the various things going on in each property, and also what the maintenance will be. And when we go to the MCC for a grant, that's one of the things we want to look into, is actually working out a maintenance plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any of the other committee members? Seeing or hearing none. The one thing that we would like for you to get to us sort of within the next, by the end of next week, would be your prioritization of the items in your requests in terms of first, second, third, and fourth priorities.
Okay.
And so that it is a help to us in terms of where those priorities are.
Thank you. Yes, we
Is
will.
there, is there anything else that I missed with respect to the request that we want to have from them?
Letter.
A letter.
Oh, yeah, that's
We're gonna
good.
send that, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll send that to
Okay.
you. I think that'll really outline it for you.
Anything else? If not, then thank you both for a very thorough and interesting presentation. And I can't wait to walk through the properties once again and see as to how the progress is. I think I need to get some boots first, but
You do have to get boots, but we'd love to have you come out and look. That would be terrific. Okay?
all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, just to the rest of the committee, remember we are on it starting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And for those of you who do like I do, you wait until the night before to read the material. Tomorrow we have the building envelope presentation from Renee Seeley for one of the house over in My Comet Village. Janice Carrero for the Nantucket Interfaith Council for the rental assistance. Clifford Williams for the Clay Street development, and then Tucker Holland and his team for the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Hearing Unless there are any questions at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So move.
Moved by Mark. Seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor, Neville? Jack?
Jack left. Oh,
Mark?
Jack's back. He's good.
Linda?
Yep.
Tim?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And chair votes aye as well. Thank you for today, and we will see you in the morning.
Thank you all.
Right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.